everyone. Welcome to Natural Sanity Mama once again with myself, Olga Gertz. And today we have Sara. Let me see if I can get this right. Gerhart Whiteside. Am I close?
Actually, yes, you actually pronounced my maiden name correctly. And I do just go by Sara Whiteside now. So
awesome. Okay, so thank you so much for coming on here. Sara so graciously agreed to be here today. I reached out to her in, I believe, a business moms group. And I was really curious about EFT for a very long time. I have never really experienced it, but I very much want to. And this whole series that I've been doing for my YouTube channel and for my Telegram channel, Moving Through Mothership, is really all about finding sanity solutions for mothers. Especially now, we've headed into the winter, it's getting rough, it's getting heavy. And unfortunately, when mothers are experiencing things like, severe anxiety or maybe depression or very intense, stressful feelings, we don't necessarily have the time sometimes or the opportunity to have that time off, to rest, to figure out where these feelings are coming from and resolve them in sort of like a gradual way. Sometimes we need an acute solution. We need something that we can use right away to sort of make ourselves feel better as we're working through whatever we're working through, right? And so I've been talking a lot about different herbs. I've been talking a lot about breathing and yoga and all these things. But today I really want to talk about EFT, emotional freedom technique, otherwise known as tapping, I think, in some circles. So I welcome here today, Sara, and I really want to get started with your story. So tell us where you're from, like where are you living right now? How did you get to doing this in your life? How did you discover it? And just tell us all about you. I love to know people's story.
sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Olga. And it's so awesome to be able to talk to other busy mamas, because that is where I came from. That is still what I am. My boys are currently 12 and 10 years old, and I've been married for 19 years. We live in Virginia, and I grew up in Massachusetts, so I am an East Coast girl. And let's see where to go from there. So I was working as a certified athletic trainer in high schools for 15 years or so. I had both of my kids while I was working full time. And then as they were getting to be school age, it was working my schedule, which was an evening schedule, was fantastic when they were younger because I had them at home all day. I passed them off to my husband and then I went to work. And then when they got to be school aged, everything changed the year that my youngest went to kindergarten, and I saw them for the craziest, most hectic 45 minutes to 1 hour in the morning. Then they went off to school. Actually, I would drive them to school and we would always be the ones rolling in late as the bell would ring. And then once they went to school, I went to work a few hours later and I didn't see them until the following morning. So it only took a very short time of doing that to realize that something had to change for our family. We also had a family business and a small coffee kiosk that we were running. And we just said, this is not working for us. So I came home from full-time work 5 years ago and have been in multi-level marketing off and on for 15 years. I have continued to work part-time as needed, weekend tournaments for athletic training coverage. I actually just picked up a part-time job to help out a colleague who's out on medical leave. So I am doing a little bit more. It is busy. And so it's like, okay, what am I going to do to take care of myself during this time? And so as I had left my athletic training job, I had already really been delving into this personal development and business development world online. And I came across EFT on a webinar, like we come across so many other things. And I was like, what is this? Because I was somebody who, although I knew meditation was good for me and I knew affirmations were good and I knew gratitude lists were good, none of them were things that I could get on board with. because partly because of the busyness. Like when do I have time to sit down and write this out? Um,
Exactly.
Taking care of my physical health took a predominant role for me for a long time because 7 years ago I was diagnosed with narcolepsy. So I
Wow.
have a sleep disorder. I was on medication for a little while, came off the medication, went vegan, really changed some lifestyle things to help me deal with those symptoms. But what I have found in the interim since starting to do EFT is that when I can really regulate my emotional wellness and my emotional health, my narcolepsy symptoms stay at bay.
Wow.
When I let my emotions go off the rails, my symptoms hit me like a Mack truck.
Ooh,
So,
that gave me
yes,
chills.
yes, it was just one of these, wow, this is really important. And this is way more important than I even thought it was. Like, I knew grounding is important and going out and getting fresh air and going and
Mm,
taking that walk, but sometimes you just don't have that chance. Either maybe the weather is getting in the way and you
yeah.
literally can't get outside, or the kids' naps are not coinciding with any time for you to take for yourself. And so, what I love so much about teaching EFT tapping is that it is something that we can do literally anywhere. And it's something that I've already taught my kids to do. And so
Love that.
we use it for them as well as for my own health. So since I learned EFT and became a practitioner, it has literally changed the face of my relationship with my kids, my relationship with my husband. And of course, we go and we do traditional therapy as well. But one of the things that really interested me about it is that the research backs its usage as a
Mm,
modality. And there are so many licensed mental health care practitioners who are now getting certified as EFT practitioners as well and using that in their clinical businesses. So that was really important to me as a healthcare provider with my background there. So it just it kind of hit me. And then I found a business coach that I was working with who was also an EFT practitioner. That's
oh,
where I really got
beautiful.
into it. I got certified. I finished my certification about a year ago, and just it has been this beautiful journey of figuring out how we're all so, in our beautiful differences, we're all so similar in the core
Yes.
of how our neurobiology is made up and responds to the stress of the world, whether it's the baby crying in the other room, the notifications going off on your phone. We were out of electricity last week for a few days. It can be any stress, but the way EFT works is it helps to calm down that fight or flight response that the body is going through. And it lets your frontal cortex just actually do what it's there to do, to think creatively. When we're caught up in the stresses of the world, it's so hard to be our natural creative selves. And so when
Mm,
you can use EFT to calm down those stress responses, and the research has shown that cortisol levels can drop as much as 46%
wow.
after doing an EFT session. And
That's
that
phenomenal.
research has been repeated. So initially they brushed it off. They were like, oh, there's no way that this is possible, that these kind
Mm-hmm.
of physiological effects are actually taking place with just
Mm-hmm.
tapping on these meridian endpoints. But then they repeated it and they're like, okay, here it is. And
This is the thing.
there's an entire book. This is The Science of
Wow.
Tapping, by
Beautiful.
Peta Stapleton, and she is an amazing researcher in Australia, just absolutely leading the way in using tapping. Actually, mostly her research is primarily in using EFT tapping for weight loss and diet and cravings, and it just is
Wow.
amazing the width and breadth of which we can use EFT for.
Wow. That was incredible. Thank you for that. And I really want to continue this conversation about the science of it. So, what is it? What is EFT defined as? And I heard the one thing that really struck me from everything you just said is how important moving through our emotions kind of on a daily basis is to maintaining our physiological sense of self and for our bodies to be well, for our whole system to be well, and nervous system and our physical bodies, right? Like you told me, your symptoms would flare up as soon as you stopped dealing with your emotions.
Mhm.
They were kind of just stuck in your body. So would you agree that this kind of practice kind of allows these emotions to come forward and move through you as opposed to staying in your body? Is that kind of the idea?
Absolutely. So what I
Mm,
liken it to is this backpack that we carry with us through our lives. And
mm,
we stuff all of those emotions and the things that we don't want to deal with in the backpack, and we try to
mm.
ignore them. But by stuffing them there, they are still with us until we finally take them out and deal with them. And when you
Yes.
can finally, what EFT does, so emotional freedom techniques, I'll go back to a little bit of the history of
Yeah.
EFT.
Let's start from like the what is
Yeah,
it?
let's start
Where
from
did
the
it come
beginning.
from?
It
Yeah.
it came around in the early 90s. A guy named Gary Craig developed EFT. It stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. So it's actually a combination of quite a few different types of tapping techniques. So that's why when you see tapping, you don't always see the same thing. Like, people do
Mm,
it a little bit differently because there are a
right.
lot of different techniques to use. So it was developed by Gary Craig out of thought field therapy. So it was coming from somebody who clinically was working on trying to deal with people with phobias. And they were
Oh,
finding that,
wow.
okay, well, if we tap on certain areas of the body and we use certain words, then we can actually get rid of these phobias. And then as it developed, the basic EFT recipe, where we tap from the top of the head and through the 9 points, and we do the setup statement on the side of the hand, that's the what we call the basic recipe, because if you use that, it pretty much works for everything. So they found that, oh, we can actually generalize this a little bit, so we don't have to have specific points for specific problems, we don't have to have specific word setups for specific issues.
Mm,
And what they've found is that actually, and what I love so much about EFT is it brings the power back to the person who is experiencing those emotions and that issue.
so important.
I There's no more effective EFT than what you can do with your own words. And so
Mm,
that's what I really love to teach, especially women, because we are just conditioned to stay quiet and keep our opinions to ourselves. And, as much as we're trying to break out of this mold, we're still breaking it right now. And so anything that anybody is out there doing that is getting women to speak up for themselves and to claim their voice. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a call with a client and they've said, it just feels so good to say that out loud, because they've been carrying it inside themselves for so long. And those emotions get wired in our body, those traumas get wired in our bodies. And we carry them around with us for our lives until we are able to rewire them. So doing the EFT, tapping on the meridian points. And so we have to also give credit where credit is due to the Eastern medicine of acupuncture and acupressure, because that's where this energy psychology technique is coming from. It is a cognitive technique, it is a somatic technique. It brings both the mind and the body together, and to elicit these changes in the stress response in the body. And so, as an overall theme, what we're doing is we're calming the stress response.
mm,
But what happens is when we experience life, we go through life and things trigger us. People with anxiety often don't even know what the triggers are.
big
And
point. Mhm.
but those what's coming up is something that their body remembers. And so if we even just tap on, even though I feel anxious when I think about doing this thing or having this conversation, or um, something that they want to do in the future, we can tap on that anxiety, and it starts to open the door to the things that led up to those anxieties beginning. And
Wow.
so one of the reasons why I love working with this with my kids is that I feel like I can take some of those things that they're going through as children. And if you've heard of the ACEs score, they're adverse childhood events, that, they're things like divorce, alcoholism,
Mm.
a family member being incarcerated, things like that, that have happened to a child before they reach the age of 18, makes them more statistically likely to develop certain things like heart conditions, anxiety, psychological disorders as adults. So it decreases going through those events as a kid, decreases what we call your window of tolerance, which is your body's ability to just get through the normal life stresses that we all go through.
Wow.
And so the more events you have, typically the smaller your window of tolerance is. So it makes it harder to get through the stresses of life without having these big responses that we, classify as a panic attack or an anxiety attack or depression. And not that tapping is going to solve all of those things, but it can go a long way in reducing the symptoms of many, many disorders. So I have to make a disclaimer. I am not a
Yeah.
licensed mental health care professional. This is
Mm.
all intended just to be informational in nature. And please go talk to your mental health care professional if you
Mm.
have one or need one, or if you have a mental health care diagnosis. But I would like to encourage people also to potentially look for a mental health care practitioner who is
Who's open?
who's open to doing these types of
Yeah.
modalities, who I think the first time I experienced something that was similar to tapping was doing EMDR in counseling sessions. So it uses eye movement, and it has something to do with desensitization of the brain response to particular
Oh.
stimulation just from memory. And so you can go on Psychology Today and filter through practitioners in your area who practice in energy psychology, who practice in somatic techniques. So that's a wonderful resource. That's actually how I found my counselor, and we've been seeing her for 4 years. So
Wow. That's a great advice.
yeah. So, you need to find the help at the level that you need it at.
Exactly.
And so if you need more professional help, please go get it. But there are ways to use tapping as a mom who is literally pulling out her hair, that instead of reaching for the bottle of wine,
Mm.
or my big thing was reacting to my kids and
Yes.
and
The
yelling.
rage when you haven't
Yes.
slept.
Yes. And absolutely, like, just snapping or
Yeah.
being so stressed out by work. And then all of that stress gets heaped on our family members because we feel safe with them.
Yep.
So we feel safe to be open and to let our emotions show. And then there we are traumatizing our children because now we're yelling at them and they don't know why.
Yes, so important and powerful to learn acute things that you could do anywhere. And that's what I always tell people about breath work. I'm like, you could do it in your car, you can do it when you're stressed, you can be carrying, like my situation, carrying two babies while they're
Mhm.
screaming, and you're like, you can breathe and
Yeah.
at the same time. So these are things that are very, very accessible, and I think that's super important. And
Yes.
I feel such a sense of urgency in talking about this right now, especially because of the state of the world right now and
Mhm.
this difficulty in predicting what the next few years will look like for moms, and the fact that
Mhm.
well, here in Canada, like they're going back to school one day, they're not going back to school the other day. You have no way of predicting your future. And so that adds to the stress. So I feel so like the sense of urgency to communicate to moms, like these are all of the things you can do to support yourself.
Yes.
Um, and
Yeah,
so,
it is. And it's so important to recognize that we are in an unprecedented time.
yes,
So taking unprecedented care of yourself
yes,
is of utmost importance. We cannot operate in the same mental space that our parents operated in.
exactly.
There is no stock market bubble right now. Like, maybe there's the housing market bubble a little bit, but that's a stressful enough situation
Yes.
anyway for a lot of people. Um, so when you're experiencing that immediate stress as a mom in the moment,
Hmm.
I particularly like to do some EFT tapping while I'm in the car. And just like singing in the car, I don't care who sees me sing, so I don't care who sees me tap. And it's not that weird. The meridian points that we use for tapping are actually natural stress reduction points that you have probably used anyway.
Like this, right?
Like this? Yes.
Yeah.
Rubbing on the temples, squeezing the bridge of the nose. Some people will like tap on their teeth or tap on their chin when they're thinking. When you kind of hug yourself for this, like, oh, life just doesn't feel good, and like you just need that kind of pressure and that comfort, putting that pressure point in on the sides of your ribs, that's another EFT tapping point. So
amazing.
One of the great places to do it is always in the bathroom, you know, that
the mother's safe haven.
Yes, the safe haven of the bathroom. And instead of like, now sometimes you will break down in tears when you're tapping, and it can be just a nice emotional release. But, you know, as you're sitting there, instead of eating all the cookies, just be tapping, you know.
Love it. Let's do an example.
Yes, absolutely. So when we do tapping, we have a setup statement that we do on the side of the hand. Now, I like to keep this as simple as possible. And so the one difference between what I have been trained to do in doing clinical EFT versus what you'll hear a lot on YouTube recordings or apps, or even see written as scripts and books, those are very wordy.
Okay.
We're going to go really simple here, so it's easy to remember, because the biggest excuse people use for not tapping is I don't know what to say. And I want to tell you that you always know what you're feeling, you know what to say. So we're going to tune into two things. We want to tune into the emotion that we're feeling. Maybe we're angry about something that happened. Okay. And then you want to tune into where you might be feeling it in your body. Now, if you don't feel it in your body, it doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. Just ignore that part of the setup statement. But most people will feel it somewhere in their body. Maybe the anger is coming through in your solar plexus, or maybe you just feel this constant tension in your shoulders, or maybe you feel this continuous pressure in your chest. You want to just do a quick little body scan and go, where am I feeling this? So we do a setup statement. We tap. You can tap with either hand, doesn't matter, 2 or 3 fingers. We start on the side of the hand by the pinky finger, and we say, even though I'm feeling angry,
even though I'm feeling angry,
and I feel it in my chest,
I
am willing to accept how I feel right now.
I'm willing to accept how I feel right now.
I'm going to pause right there. So one of the parts of the setup statement is called the acceptance statement. The traditional acceptance statement is I deeply and completely accept myself. When I first started tapping, I could not say that. Most people who are just getting into it, it does not feel true. I don't deeply and completely accept myself when I'm angry and I'm yelling at my kids.
It's too much of a leap.
Yes, it's like saying an affirmation that you don't believe.
Yeah.
So we take it back to where it does feel truthful. To witness how I'm feeling. Okay, that feels like a pretty good place for most people to start, is I witness how I'm feeling right now. So we'll do this 3 times. Even though I'm feeling angry.
Even though I'm feeling angry.
I can feel it in my chest.
I can feel it in my chest.
I'm willing to accept my feelings.
Willing to accept my feelings.
Even though I feel this anger right now.
Even though I feel this anger right now.
Boiling up inside my chest.
Boiling up inside my chest.
I am willing to witness how I feel.
I'm willing to witness how I feel.
Even though I feel this anger in my chest.
Even though I feel this anger in my chest.
I am willing to accept that I feel this way.
I'm willing to accept that I feel this way.
And then we go to the top of the head. Feeling this anger.
Feeling this anger.
We move to the top of the eyebrow. This anger in my chest.
This anger in my chest.
Move to the outside part of the eyebrow. Feeling this anger in my chest.
Feeling this anger in my chest.
Tap underneath the eyes. Feeling this anger.
Feeling this anger.
Underneath the nose. This anger in my chest.
Anger in my chest.
So on the chin point, we're actually going to go just underneath the lip. Feeling this anger.
Feeling this anger.
Then we go just an inch below the collarbones. feeling this anger in my chest.
Feeling this anger in my chest.
And then we move to right underneath the arm, right about the bra line, feeling this anger in my chest.
Feeling this anger in my chest.
Good. So that's an example of a round of tapping. And what we would do from there is we kind of reassess. We often have people say, how intense does the anger feel on a scale of 0 to 10? So if you started at maybe a 6, or actually if I'm angry, usually I'm starting at like a 9.
Yeah.
So I
same.
go, okay, how am I feeling now? How has this sensation in my body changed? Like maybe I'm not feeling it so much in my chest anymore, or maybe I am. Sometimes it moves areas of the body. Sometimes the emotion will change. Oftentimes anger will change to sadness very quickly.
Yes.
And so what you want to do is you want to recognize that change, and then you just change your setup statement to reflect that. So then you would go, even though I feel this sadness in my chest, if it's changed. And so you change the setup statement to match what you're feeling. And so the important thing is to always say exactly what you're feeling. And I even will tell my clients sometimes, if the area of your body has switched, like if we're tapping on the eye and you feel it in your stomach now instead of your chest, let me know, because I don't want to be saying, and I feel it in my chest, when you actually feel it in your stomach. We always want to be recognizing what the body is experiencing. And because that's the way we're kind of, if you take it to the kind of woo-woo side of things, we're chasing that energy out of your body. So a lot of times when people are tapping, especially if they're first timers, or they're just starting to get into it, they might be yawning. They might burp. They might feel this tingly feeling around the crown of their head. There are a lot of different ways that the energy shift will kind of manifest itself. So we always encourage people to drink a lot of water, kind of like after you go for a massage, you want to make sure you're well hydrated. You want to make sure you get a lot of rest. When I was doing some intense sessions at the beginning, when I was just getting into it, I would be exhausted after doing an EFT session, because I just wasn't used to experiencing my emotions in such an upfront and truthful way like that.
Yes.
So it's not nearly as intense anymore as it used to be, but it's just as effective every time.
Wow. It's so powerful. One thing that gets me the most is we have so much of these conversations with ourselves in our head. So it's just like you said, actually voicing it out loud. You're having a conversation with your body out loud, but also you're really, really cultivating that intuition, which I feel like a lot of people tend to ignore. Like moms are pretty good at tapping into that, but still it's like you're voicing it is really important, and you're just getting to know your body so much better. Like every single time you do this, you must you're cultivating a relationship, and it's just clear. You are finding ways to express exactly what you're feeling and where it's hiding in your body to then be able to release it faster. And so how many sessions would you do? I know it probably depends on the person. So how many rounds would you do at a time? Does it depend on, oh, I feel better now, so then you'd stop? Or like, what is your kind of average that you do now?
Well, when I do a session one-on-one with somebody, we usually set it up for an hour. So typically the first 10 or 15 minutes is spent kind of in review. How are things going? And what is the issue that you'd really like to focus on today? Like maybe I have to have this conversation with my husband and I'm really anxious about it and how it's going to go. And because I'm anxious about it, I'm really putting it off. And so, we dig into what is the goal of the session, because you could tap on emotions all day long and never really get to a point of conclusion. But if we can identify that goal at the beginning of the session, what is it you want to get out of? Then when we move forward, sometimes I tap as few as 4 rounds with people. Sometimes we tap as many as 12 to 15 rounds, depending on how quickly things shift. The more experienced a person is in EFT tapping, typically the quicker it goes and the more rounds we get through. And number of rounds does not necessarily determine effectiveness or outcome. So, less is not more is not necessarily better in this case. It's about really staying true and focused to the topic at hand Because if you start to jump all over the map, then, we can touch on 5 or 6 different subjects, but did we actually get anywhere? So that's the goal, really working with a trained practitioner is very that fact, because they can really help you stay on focus. Get full. In terms of working with people, if I were to work with a client, I like to work with them in longer time frames. Some practitioners will say, oh, you can have 6 sessions in this package and you can schedule them whenever you want. I prefer to do a 3 to 4 month package and see people 3 times a month. So I do 3, we do 3 out of 4 weeks because life always happens, motherhood happens, and we go, oops, I can't meet that week. So it depends on the practitioner, but, on your own, tapping can be great to do as, is it part of your morning routine, or do you maybe do it when you're out for a walk or driving in the car or when you're in the shower? Just tapping, even if you don't know what to say, is such a beautiful way to help to calm down that stress response in the body, to help lower your cortisol levels. And we all need that. We all need to lower our cortisol levels as much as possible. So even if you're just, you're making breakfast for the kids and the oatmeal's on the stove, or you're flipping pancakes and you just tap along, and you'd be surprised how sometimes even just tapping can kind of stimulate, oh, there's this thing in the back of my head, or I couldn't sleep last night because I was thinking about this. And you start to tap on it. Like, even though I couldn't sleep last night because I was worried. Oh, I was worried. Oh, where do I feel that worry in my body? And just kind of dig into it. And it's really, it's not funny, but it always seems, it's just kind of enlightening, and how this world is such a transfer of energy that sometimes when I tap on a subject, like I'm nervous about talking to my husband, guess what shifts? And all of a sudden he brings up the topic of conversation all on his own.
Wow.
And the conversation or like something changes, something shifts, and we don't even need to have the conversation because something really changed. And it's like, wow, that energetic transfer. I've put that out into
that gives me chills.
I know, it's just so amazing. And so that is part of where this has helped me in being a better mom to my kids, is because I'm managing my own emotions.
Yes.
It helps them be more relaxed.
You're not dumping your own stresses on them. You're like, okay, I can work through this, and then whatever's left might come out, and it's okay. You're human. Your kids are allowed to see you having emotions, but you're not attacking your kids because you have nowhere else to put that, right?
And they know that it's going to be better. Like, they know that if they see me upset, or if they see me tapping, they can be like, okay, mom's like dealing with some stuff, and she'll be fine in a little while. And I don't have to worry about her not being emotionally available. And that's obviously not a conversation that they're having consciously, but that's going on in the back of their minds, unconsciously. So is mom going to be there for me? Is survival. It's everything our brain does is still operating on this survival mechanism, on fight or flight. And for women, it's not so much fight. It's not even so much flight. It's freeze. And that's where I spent years in freeze. Even after I left my full-time job, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where my business is taking me. Like, what is going on, and the stresses of the finances. And I froze for years. And EFT is what got me out of that, and finally got me into being able to go, oh, this is the thing I want to achieve, and this is what I can do to help me achieve it.
Slowly move forward, right? It gets you out of the like stuck feeling. That's so funny you say that, because one of the things that I'm really focused on right now is overcoming the stuck as well in motherhood. Because I remember when I first was born, I was really in that mental, emotional stuck space, and it was a challenge. And it's kind of hard sometimes. You don't almost realize you were there until, for example, I just had my twins, and although that was challenging and insane and all the things, I didn't experience that much stuckness. And so I really realized that movement. So one thing I've been leaning into a lot, which I think EFT totally is a part of that, is that movement in your body is movement in your life, right? And so moving your body energies and moving your actual body through dance and yoga and all those things will allow you to get unstuck, because as you unstuck your body, you'll unstuck your life slowly as well, because
Yes.
your body's moving into the future, and our bodies are meant to move, right? And it's such a sedentary lifestyle. Even as a mom who's running around after her kids, there's very little time for intentional movement or mindful movement, right?
Yeah.
So the one thing I'm really leaning into is, telling moms to take these really simple things and just do them around your kids, do them while you drive, do them while you're showering, do them everywhere, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not going to be perfect. You may not get an hour and a half yoga class like you used to when you were single or whatever, but you got to do something, to support yourself. And this could be one of those things you just add into your routine, and that just changes your life. Like, little things change your life often. It's not the
Yeah.
huge things, it's the little things, right?
Absolutely. And it is just like you said, that movement, and adding that movement. I'm a kinesthetic learner. It's why I
Mm,
picked something like athletic training as a career, because I could get my hands in there.
yes.
I could learn by doing.
Yes.
And and all of a sudden you took and just had me tap on my face while I was saying some things, and it all of a sudden it brought meditation and kind of
Mm.
affirmations and this acceptance, this radical acceptance of, it is okay to feel this way. It is okay to have these feelings, to say what I'm feeling. It just brought so much power back into my life by bringing in that movement aspect. And so I love that that is what you're focusing on. And
Yes.
I was a dancer. I've gotten back to
Oh,
dance.
wow.
Um, I've gotten back to dance since leaving my full-time job. I compete with an adult tap company, so we
Wow.
have a blast. That's
Oh, that's
so I do
fantastic.
tapping and I do tap dance. It gets a little
Yes,
confusing.
it all goes to you tap everywhere, on the floor,
I
on
just,
your
yes,
body.
all over the place, all tapping all the time. And but that movement is so important, and you're right, we get so far away from it. And then having an online business, and I'm in this
Mhm.
chair, and I mean, one of my goals right now for this year is 100 miles in 100 days outside, which for me is very hard in the cold.
Oh, I love.
I'm on track right now, but that's in addition to my normal workouts, because like the workouts are great, but I just spent 3 months in physical therapy for my back and my hips.
Wow.
So, like, let's keep this going. And it's that continue to move it forward. One of the sayings that I love is that one thing we can be certain of is change. And if we don't
Yes.
transition and move through that change, that is where we get stuck in crisis mode. If you can't transition, that's where crisis happens. And
Wow.
so the more we can continue to move our body, move our minds, move our lives in different ways, I think the healthier we're going to be. And if we can do that for ourselves as moms, then we're setting that precedent for our kids too.
Oh, 100%. And that's the number one thing that is beautiful about this, is you're actually showing your children how to name emotions. You're showing your children that it's okay to feel, that all of these things it is like completely the other end of how, for example, my parents raised me, where it's like, no, we don't want you when
We
you're
don't
upset.
talk
Like,
about that.
go get better and then come back.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's truly wonderful that they get to see this side of you, and they're going to be so emotionally intelligent just because
Mhm.
they see their mom practicing this on a daily basis, and they see their mom prioritizing her well-being, and
Mhm.
they'll learn to do the same. So I think that's really, really beautiful and
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, I want to mention one thing with, if you think about using tapping with your kids,
Oh yeah.
there's a book that was written called Gorilla Thumps and Bear Hugs, or vice versa, something like that. It's by
I'll
the
write that
Tapping
down.
Solution Group. Yeah, I think it's Bear Hugs and Gorilla Thumps, something like
Hmm.
that. It's on Amazon. And so that's a good way to bring that into the conversation with smaller kids. Oftentimes kids they'll have trouble, or they don't want to name an emotion, and that's okay. one of the first times I used tapping with one of my sons was during a thunderstorm, and he had never had this kind of reaction to a storm before.
Wow.
But it was the middle of the night. He came into my bedroom and he was so scared. He was shaking, like physically shaking. And so we started to tap, and you just have them mirror you. You say, just tap on your body where mommy's tapping. Or if they're really little or they're sleepy, like you're trying to get them to go to sleep, you can actually I would rub little circles in those stimulation points. And I'll tell you, there is nothing like rubbing on those spots to knock a kid out. It's wonderful.
Wow. I will try it tonight.
Yeah. And well, it was so funny. I used to, with my youngest, because I was home with him the whole first year after he was born, like he's just my mama's boy, and I would hold him all the time and I would stroke his hair as he would go to sleep. So I was rubbing his head from the top of that head point, kind of almost down to the eyebrow point. And I noticed a few years later, as he was getting older, he would twirl his hair in that spot on the top as he was getting sleepy. And I'm like, oh, George is tired. And it was just this natural thing that he had picked up on because it was something that I did for him, and that brought him comfort. And so when we can, start teaching our kids that there are things that we can do for ourselves to feel comfort, to feel safe in times and places that we don't necessarily feel safe, that is so important for them developing. We actually, with the thunderstorm thing, just the tapping points were not quite working. And so I brought in a different technique, and I said, okay, I want you to cross your arms across your chest. And so we brought in a little bit of breath work, and we did this cross chest technique where you match the breath with the tapping on the chest. And if they don't want to do it on the chest, you can do it on the legs, or but there's so many different techniques to use, and they're all great ways to teach our kids how to regulate themselves.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. This is amazing. I'm going to have to go through the video and record some of the books that you have mentioned. And I'm just going to have all of that at the bottom of the video for everyone. This is an amazing conversation. I can talk about it forever, but I know you have a huge day. Yeah. I know you have a huge day ahead of you.
Thank you.
So yes, I really, really appreciate you coming on here, and I'm looking forward to working with you more. And one sort of last word of advice you can say to our mamas that are listening, and also let us know how people can reach you if they want to work with you one-on-one.
Sure. Well, let's see. My website is still up and coming. My freebie is available at sarawhiteside.com/freebie, and the website will be there hopefully by the end of the month. But I am also very active, mostly on not on Facebook, mostly on Instagram at Sara, it's SARA, no H, Whiteside 19. Is a great place to send me a message. I would love to hear from anybody who has watched the interview and has questions. And I have some tapping videos up there. I like to do stories. I do a few posts, but pretty active on stories. So you can usually catch me there on a daily basis.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much, Sara. I really appreciate it. And I will hopefully get to work with you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Have a wonderful day. Mwah.